Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 26th of May, now it's almost 12 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update today in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments that you may find interesting. But before I start, let me share with you information about Mike Jones, host of Earl Grey channel. I think most of you, majority of you, are familiar with Mike and his great work, his channel. And today, number of sources did report that Mike and his assistant interpreter Maria Lilianova are missing in Donbass. Last known location of and about this was reported by John Mark Dugan, friend of Mike, and as I understand, editor on his channel. And just a few minutes ago, I just shared information, additional information. Mark did share with public latest news, but it's obvious that Mike and Maria are still missing. Last known location of them was in Solidar direction, and for last couple of days, friends of Mike and his family members, Mike and Maria, cannot get in touch with them, which is very worrying development, because as you know, Mike was on this kill list of Zelensky's regime, and if secret services of Zelensky's regime did find out location of Mike and his crew, it's quite possible that they may conduct some terror activity against them. They may try to kill them or capture them, so it's a worrying development. Truly, let's hope Mike and Maria are okay. Maybe they are in some place in Donbass where is no means of communication, but we should all pay attention, of course, because we all know what kind of individuals are running Ukraine. So anything can be expected from Zelensky and his criminal associates, criminal and terrorist associates. So if any new information, of course, I will share with you on my Telegram page and next updates. And because we are talking about journalism and Ukraine, let's once again mention that Gonzalo Lira is still in captivity in Ukraine, and unfortunately US Embassy, as I understand, US Embassy in Ukraine does nothing to help Gonzalo to be freed. And by the way, I guess all of you do know Gonzalo Lira and his work. He's citizen journalist, he's a blogger, he has his own channel, and he is a citizen of Chile and USA. He has double citizenship, and US, of course, should be intervening in this case and trying to free Gonzalo, because he was accused with some crap stuff from Zelensky's regime. But unfortunately, because Gonzalo was quite critical about these globalist agendas and globalists and current incredibly or extremely insane administration of Biden in US, maybe State Department just don't want to help him, despite the US laws itself, which demands from State Department to assist US citizens all around the world through embassies and official and diplomatic missions. So let's share information about Mike, Maria, about Gonzalo. Maybe it will help at least slightly, which will be good, of course. That's been said, let's talk about some other news now, and I will start with missile and drone strike exchange between Russian side and Zelensky's regime during previous 10-12 hours. Yesterday afternoon, late afternoon, Zelensky's regime did conduct missile strikes in direction of Berdyansk. Once again, Berdyansk is on Azov Sea here, and even though there is no exact information what did happen, according to some reports, 3 missiles, possibly Storm Shadow missiles, long-range cruise missiles, were launched in direction of Berdyansk. 2 of them was shot down by Russian air defense systems, but 1 get through, and there was some explosion on outskirts of Berdyansk. I did share footage of that on my Telegram channel yesterday. Yes, that's it, by the way. And this morning Zelensky's regime also conducted drone strikes in direction of Krasnodar, which is quite far away from territory that are controlled by Zelensky's regime. And we had reports that Russian air defense systems did shut down Ukrainian missile in Rostov area here. And this morning, Zelensky's regime once again shelled Donetsk city, and a few minutes ago I did share this video footage from Donetsk. According to reports, Ukrainian militaries launch a missile strike on Scientific Research Institute in Donetsk by using HIMARS multi-launch rocket systems, and journalists were in that building at the moment, and that's footage. That's a footage of it. Well, Zelensky's regime does what terrorists do, basically. So no surprises, really. Unfortunately, Russian air defense systems, even though they are very capable, it's just technically impossible to shut down all the aerial targets, and some missiles that are launched by Zelensky's regime are managing to bypass Russian air defense systems and hit targets. Usually it's unfortunately, what is most unfortunate, that usually those missiles are striking civilian apartments, institutes, and I mean, it seems like Zelensky's regime don't really care who will be hurt with those missiles. They won't do some damage to Russian side, and they use all means that they have been provided by Western elites, including long-range drones and missiles. And by the way, during the night time, Russian side did conduct quite large missile and drone strike against logistical and military infrastructure of Zelensky's regime. There were huge explosions in Dnipropetrovsk area. There were huge explosions. It's here, by the way, Dnipropetrovsk. Ukrainian side calls this city Dnipro, which is just insane. But anyway, there were explosions in Kiev direction, in Zaporozhye region, in some western parts of Ukraine. So I guess Russian side is still active in attempt to destroy as many ammunition depots, fuel depots, and military warehouses of Zelensky's regime as possible. And I guess they are quite effective. Of course, Zelensky's regime did stated that they did shut down some 90 to 95% of Russian drones and missiles. It's up to you what you can believe. Me personally, I don't think at this stage the Zelensky's regime air defense systems of criminal regime in Ukraine are capable to shut down more than 30-40% of aerial targets, maybe even less than that. So let's continue now. But as you can see, sites are fairly active when it comes to missile and drone strikes, and this will definitely continue. This will not stop anytime soon. Let me share additional information, and yes, that's a very significant statement that was made by former Russian president and current deputy chairman of Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev. But before I share with you statements from Medvedev, let me give you a quick summary about situation on the front line. Kherson direction is artillery duels between the sides. That's the usual stuff for the last couple of months. Same happening in Zaporozhye region, missile and drone strikes. Very active close range fights in Donetsk direction, in Marinka and Avdiivka. That's also quite usual development. It's a more or less calm situation now in Bakhmut direction. As I understand, Russian side are preparing ground to conduct offensive operations in direction of Chisov Yar and Konstantinovka. This is very important to establish control over these settlements in order to conduct in the foreseeable future offensive operations in direction of Kramatorsk-Slavyansk agglomeration, and same goes for Seversk, Liman and Kupiansk direction. As I understand, the Russian side is preparing large-scale offensive operations which may take place this summer or maybe in the winter. It's hard to tell because, of course, the general staff of Russian armed forces are not sharing information with me, so we can just base our predictions on information that we have from open sources. So that's been said, let's talk about statement that Medvedev made yesterday afternoon, according to which conflict in Ukraine may end by full-scale disintegration of this failed state, when western parts of Ukraine will become under direct control or even integrated in the neighboring countries of Ukraine from the west. Of course, we are talking about Hungary, Poland, Romania, possibly Slovakia, who may have some territorial claims, and the rest of the territory will become under control of Russian side. So Medvedev did talk about few scenarios. In one scenario, western part of Ukraine will be under direct control but not integrated in neighboring with Ukraine NATO member states. In that case, this conflict will continue for a long time. But if these neighboring countries with Ukraine will integrate Western Ukraine in their territory, then conflict will probably end, because the rest of the Ukraine will become a part of Russia. And by the way, not Zelensky, but Medvedev did made almost similar comments quite a few times before, and I did share about the information, and I did share my opinion that this is not done by mistake, or this is not just statements for attention. I was thinking this was one of the scenarios that Moscow was working And just recently, a few days ago, if you remember, Putin had a meeting with the head of Russian Constitutional Court, and he also spoke about Ukraine's history. And I guess this is all this stuff is part of preparation of the ground to divide Ukraine between neighboring countries, and maybe behind the scenes there are some negotiations taking place already, so that when sides are ready, or when time is right, Russian side will establish control over the entire southeast part of Ukraine, at least from Kharkiv to Odessa region. Western states, western neighbors of Ukraine will take control over the western regions, and only question will be left: will Kiev and surrounding areas stay as a quasi-state on the name of Ukraine, or become under control Russian Federation? So I was writing since the 2014 that once Western elites will provoke full-scale conflict between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine will be eventually, as a result of this conflict, Ukraine will be divided between neighboring countries: Russia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, maybe Slovakia. And I guess we are now moving exactly in that direction. And they will, after this conflict will end, there may be no Ukraine as a state on the political map. So I guess this is that's why I think the statements from Medvedev, recent statements from Russian President Putin, are very significant. And I guess there is some negotiations behind the scenes to about ways that this scenario will be implemented on the ground. It will take some time, of course. It will take months, or maybe year even, but eventually this conflict, of course, will end, and central and southeastern parts of Ukraine probably will become under Russian control or part of Russian Federation, and the western parts of Ukraine will become under control or part of western neighboring states of Ukraine. Let me continue, and this is also interesting news. RT is reporting that Victoria Nuland, representative of State Department, and the neocons stated that United States for almost 6 months now helping Zelensky's regime to prepare counteroffensive, large-scale counteroffensive that everybody is talking about. Well, this is one more confirmation that US is directly involved in this conflict. They are openly saying now about it. They don't really care what world will think about it. But once again, no matter what Biden's administration will do, there will be no large-scale counteroffensive, and because Zelensky's regime don't have enough manpower, Zelensky's regime don't have enough ammunition and military equipment, and even though reserves that Zelensky's regime has are enough to conduct local-scale offensive or counteroffensive operations in area of this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. Lately, I have some doubts that Ukrainian forces even will be able to conduct some local-scale offensives, because this will be, it's just too clear that this will be a suicidal mission for Ukrainian brigades that will participate in this counteroffensive, because once they may gain some success in first few hours, first few days, But once Russian defense lines, Russian military stop them, and once these Ukrainian brigades run out of steam, it will be Russian turn to conduct offensive operations, and they will just decimate these last reserves of Ukrainian armed forces. And with that, we will see beginning of the end, not just Zelensky's presidency and his regime, but also Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity. Because morale in Ukrainian armed forces are extremely low already. And by the way, almost on daily basis now we have reports that some sorts of mutinies are taking place in Ukrainian units, and not just that, but yesterday, for example, there were video footage that head of one of the Ukrainian battalions was shot by officer from this very battalion, because this head of this shot person, this killed high-ranking officer of Ukrainian armed forces, were demanding his battalion, this battalion, to be sent in attack as to be used as a meat, cannon meat. And officers in that battalion disagree with this, and one of them take matters in his hand and shot this high-ranking officer in the head. And there is footage about it. I could not share that video on my Telegram page because it's just too graphic. But that's a level of morale that is presented in Ukrainian armed forces already. So can you imagine what will happen when the Russian side will decimate this last more or less battle-ready brigades or last reserves that Zelensky's regime has in Zaporozhye, Dnipropetrovsk or Kherson regions, accumulated to conduct these counteroffensives in the direction of Azov Sea that are demanded from Washington and London. Ukrainian army will just collapse entirely. And that may happen. So no matter what Nuland gonna says, no matter how many tanks, missiles and whatever other military equipment Western allies gonna send to Ukraine, end is near for this conflict, and we all know how this conflict will end, with undoubted unconditional victory of Russian side over the Western elites. Let me continue now, and RIA Novosti is reporting about statements that head of US General Staff Mark Milley made. In US, General Staff has different name, but meaning is the same. It's just like General Staff. And Mark Milley said that F-16s won't be some kind of miracle weapon if they will be delivered to Zelensky's regime. Basically, he is repeating everything that me and many other channels did say about F-16s. It's not a wonder weapon. It will basically change nothing. And Mark Milley himself did spoke about these fighter jets, that Russia has about 1,000 fighter jets and very effective air defense systems. So it's just simply not true and wrong to think that Western fourth generation fighter jets will play some huge role in this conflict and will turn tide or anything like that. It's just not happening. It will prolong this conflict probably if Western elites will truly deliver these fighter jets to Zelensky's regime. But yet again, I'm 100% sure that Zelensky's regime will not receive in reality and will not have control over any Western-made fighter jet. Just none of it. And whenever Western-made fighter jets will be introduced to the battlefield, it will happen only when Poland and other countries in anti-Russian coalition will enter this conflict openly. Not before that. You know my take on this topic, so there is no need probably to repeat myself, but to say it simply, Poland for quite some time now are creating this anti-Russian coalition, try to build anti-Russian coalition and then operate not under the umbrella of NATO, but under the umbrella of this anti-Russian coalition, whatever they're gonna call it. And I guess this coalition is ready to become active more or less, and in coming months, before end of summer, let's say, Poland and a few more countries from this anti-Russian coalition will, in my opinion, will most definitely enter this conflict openly. And that's the time when Western elites will introduce these Western fighter jets to the conflict. And those fighter jets will operate from Western neighbors of Ukraine, from Slovakia, from Poland, from Romania, possibly, and maybe from western regions of Ukraine, after these regions will become under control of Poland and Romania. Because even though Hungary will probably also take control over the Transcarpathia regions, Hungary will not allow nobody to use its airspace or its airfields to conduct any military operation against Russia. And question remains, will, as I said many times before, only question remains is that will Poland and these other countries of anti-Russian coalition will stay only in the western part of Ukraine and try to establish no-fly zone there, or will they move eastwards and end up in direct clashes with Russian forces? That's only question that remains, and I guess they will stay in western parts of Ukraine. And that's how Ukraine eventually will be divided. Western parts will go to western neighbors of Ukraine, and the rest of the Ukraine will become part of Russia, where it belongs really. That's it. Let me continue, and this is also very significant, very significant. RIA Novosti is reporting, based on statements from Russian Defense Ministry, that US military is working on biological weapons in Ukraine. This is not the first time that Russian high-ranking military leaders are making this kind of statements. And we have even names of projects like UP8, P444, Flyway. That's names of projects to create some biological weapons that have been worked on in biolabs, US biolabs in Ukraine. And according to this information, US military is trying to create biological weapons, not just against humans, but also against some crops, so that they can, and they are establishing their facilities all around the countries that are they're confronting worldwide. And this is extremely dangerous stuff, because it seems like US is preparing to conduct a global scale conflict, not just with conventional weapons, but also with biological weapons, and to impact not just humans, but also crops, to cause civil unrests and rest of it. So, I mean, this is absolute madness, man. You may, once you read this kind of information, you may think that this is some kind of bad scenario for Hollywood movie, about catastrophic movies, you know. But this is happening in reality. This is unfortunately happening in reality, and who knows where and when these biological weapons will be used by US military. And under order of what kind of crazy administration. So I guess it's very much time for the world to demand from US to stop this incredibly dangerous activity with bioweapons, because this is not a joke, for God's sake. Yes, I do understand that US elites will probably ignore everybody or try to ignore everybody, but after all, rest of the world, if rest of the world is united, they have some means to pressure Washington to stop this kind of extremely dangerous activity. And by the way, just a few minutes ago, RIA Novosti made an update that NATO member states experiencing some shortages for military ammunition for F-16 fighter jets. Probably they did start checking their stockpiles and they find out that they don't really have enough ammunition or something like that. And this is also interesting. This is RIA Novosti's report about reaction of residents of Amsterdam yesterday when Russian tank was deployed. Destroyed Russian tanks were deployed as a kind of exhibition, which is on its own, it's quite sick stuff to do. As you know, this Zelensky's regime, those sick individuals, mentally sick individuals, and their Western masters are taking these destroyed Russian tanks all around Europe and doing some exposition. For what? For what? What purpose these kind of actions serves? I mean, it's just sick. And residents in Berlin, before yesterday, in Berlin, in many other cities, did bring flowers to these tanks. And very same happened in Amsterdam yesterday, and this is the picture, you can see it. Because despite attempt of Western elites to create from us, from ordinary citizens of Russia or Western states, enemies, to impose on our mind this propaganda that we are enemies to each other. Despite these attempts, it's obvious that people are not buying in this crap. Some do, unfortunately, but many people don't. And that's an example of it. And residents of Amsterdam did bring flowers to this tank, and they do understand that this is you should not do this kind of stuff. You can take some trophies or military equipment in museum. That's a different story, but to deploy destroyed military equipment on ordinary streets or squares when it's probably in these tanks life was lost, I mean, it's just a truly deplorable step to do something like that. It's just only non-humans can do this kind of stuff, man. Because if you have any humanity, you will understand that possibly life was lost in this tank, and you should act accordingly. And residents of Amsterdam did bring flowers and show their humanity, and I can only applaud this. And hopefully Western elites fail to create from us enemies, man, because we are not We are not enemies. These criminal elites are enemies to all of us, especially Western elites, because they are out of control and they are most powerful. Unfortunately, they are most powerful gang in this world right now. These globalists and their puppets just all around. Let me continue, and this is very significant development. TASS news agency is reporting that according to Lukashenko's statement, president of Belarus, Russian tactical nuclear weapons already have been deployed in Belarus. So this is once again, this decision from Russian side to deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus was a warning to Western elites, and especially warning to Polish elites to stay away from Russian Kaliningrad region and from Belarus. And hopefully Western elites and Polish elites did realize this, hopefully. And now Lukashenko is confirming that Russian tactical nuclear warheads already are in Belarus. So this is very significant, very significant. Before Polish elites do anything crazy, they should think twice and then think again. And Polish society should pay attention to this development, because if in worst case scenario, some truly devastating stuff may happen. So, and by the way, this is also very significant developments. RIA Novosti is reporting that Yerevan and Baku, leadership of Armenia and Azerbaijan, that's countries in South Caucasus region. So this is Azerbaijan here, and this is Armenia. So they did reach agreement to recognize territorial integrity of each other, which means that Armenia will recognize Nagorno-Karabakh region as a part of Azerbaijan, and this is a huge step towards peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Let's hope this will work, and Kremlin did react on this topic, and Putin, president of Russian Federation, did said that sides are truly close to achieve peace on long terms. And yes, let's hope this is the case. Let's hope this is the case. And as you know, Armenia demanded from Azerbaijan that rights of Armenian people in Nagorno-Karabakh will be protected, and I guess Azerbaijan did promise that they will be treated as citizens of Azerbaijan with no difference. That's how it's supposed to be, for God's sake. And hopefully sides will achieve some long-term peace, which is great for entire region, not just for these countries. I do understand that leadership of Nagorno-Karabakh and many citizens of Armenia are not happy with this development. And there were some statements from Nagorno-Karabakh officials, Armenian-controlled part of Nagorno-Karabakh, that this is kind of red line for them. They cannot accept this development, but they can do nothing really, just make statements at this point, because after last large-scale conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, it's become obvious that Armenia is not in position now to dictate any terms to Azerbaijan after military loss on the battlefield. So in any way, let's hope sides will achieve long-term peace, which is gonna be great for not just these countries but also to entire region. Let's see how situation will develop. And this is exactly what I just said, that Putin, president of Russian Federation, did said that situation in in southern Caucasus is moving in direction of peaceful development, peace agreement, and yes, this is definitely good achievement. Yet again, I do understand that not everyone in Armenia will be happy about it, but eventually sides should achieve peace. They cannot fight forever. And this is last update, last news for this update. I hope you will find the video interesting, and if so, please hit that like button, leave some commentary about any topic you like. More likes and comments, videos will have probably more chances. I'll get to reach wider audience, and for very same reason, please share links to my videos with your friends on Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, or any other platform that you are active on. And if you can, if you think this channel is interesting, useful, and deserves to exist, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, buy me a coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see links under this video in the description box. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.